welcome to lesson 38. And now we're going to talk about multiple transformations, when you can have more than one thing happening to a shape. So watch how we can identify if an image is congruent or similar. That's the first thing I'm going to look for. How I can determine the new coordinates that undergo a series of transformations. So you'll watch that sequence happening, and then how I map that final image. Math Marvels, in this lesson, we're going to talk about what happens when a figure changes in more than one way. So for example, in this problem, we're going to have our original figure, and it's going to have one change, and then it's going to have a second change. And so you can see we have a prime and a double prime to represent both. And I'm going to use this chart to help really organize my thinking, to make sure that I'm mapping out what's happening with each step before I start making changes onto the graph itself. So let's start off with our rotations, which we know means we are going to move, we're going to flip things around, we're going to turn it either clockwise or counterclockwise. And here we're going to rotate 90 degrees clockwise. So let's go back. I'm going to use my generalizations to help me with this. So 90 degrees clockwise, which means my original points are going to flip. And my first coordinate is now going to be its opposite. So not only do I reverse the coordinates, they're going to be opposite. So looking at I'm going to use that to just map all these out. So the first one's pretty easy. My -3, they're the same. So they're still going to be -3, except the first one's going to be an opposite. So it's going to be +3 and then -3. So that's my new point. Let's go to B prime. So I'm going to flip it. It's going to be +3. It has to be the opposite. And then 1. Let's go to C prime, +5. And then 1. And then I'm going to have +5 and -3. So this would be just my first change, my first rotation, my first transformation. And let's see what this would look like if I just made this one change. Let's map these out. So A prime is 3, -3. Here's A prime. 3, +1. Here's B prime. And that makes sense that they would be on opposite sides of an axis, right? Because the same thing is happening here. It makes sense that this is 3 away and this is 1 away, 1 away and 3 away. So we're on the right track, definitely. C is at 5, 1. So here's our C prime. And then we have 5, -3. And this is D prime. So here's our first change. They're exactly the same. They have the same area. They have an area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units. And everything mirrors. I have a B and a C on one side. And here are the other two coordinates on the other end of an axis. So that's my first set. Now I'm going to take this image, these points, and I'm going to reflect them over the y-axis. So here's the next part. Reflect it in the y-axis. All right, so here's my y. It's right over here. And so I'm going to flip my points over. I'm going to just literally flip them over to the other side for the reflection. So what do we know is going to happen? I know that because I'm going over the y-axis, my points, my x's, they were positive. They are now going to be negative. So that I know to be true. So this B is going to, this new point over here is going to be -3, +1. So -3, 1. My B prime. My C is going to be -5, +1. C double prime. And let's go to my A. My A is also going to flip. So here again is just at, here is +3. So it's going to be a negative over here. So it's going to be -3, -3. So let's put that. -3, -3. Look at that. It actually went right back to its original point. Interesting. And my D is going to be at -5, -3. So you can see it. So now here's my new image. And you can see all the things that happened. First, I rotated to here, and then I flipped this image over this axis. So we're going to stop here, and here are all my new coordinates. So things that I want you to think about while I'm doing this. Use your table to work through this problem part at a time. Do one set, this whole transformation. Do this first before you do the next step, especially in the beginning. You don't want to go from this point to this point to this point. Map it out in sections, really chunk it, and use your generalizations and your notes to do each part. It can be very overwhelming when you see all the parts together. So we're going to stop there so you can jot this down into your notes. And we're going to do one more example. Math marbles, in this problem we have not one, not two, but 3 transformations happening. So let's look at this one over here, and it says triangle ABC has gone through a series of 3 transformations resulting in a new triangle. The 3 transformations are a rotation of 180 degrees counterclockwise about the origin, a reflection over the x-axis, and then a reflection over the y-axis. But we're only going to look at one point, which is point C. So we're going to start with rotation first, and our first rotation was 180 degrees counterclockwise. I'm going to put CC. And we know that whether it's counterclockwise or clockwise, it's the exact same thing. It just means whatever our x and y is, it's going to be the opposite of x and the opposite of y. So in my first point, I have 2, 1. So its opposite would be -2, 2, -1. So its opposite would be -2, +1. So let's map these 2 points out. So starting off with 2, -1, here's the original, here's C. And now I want -2, +1. So here is C prime on the other end. All right, now we're going to do 2 reflections, 2 flips. So our first flip is going to be over the x-axis. So we're going to flip it from here over here. So looking at that, that means, is your x going to change? When we flip over the x-axis, my x is going to stay the same. The only thing that's going to change is my y. So my x will still stay -2. And my y is now just going to become -1. So there's my second change happening. All it did was flip over the other side. Now, my last change is now I'm going to flip over the y-axis. So here's my new one. So we're going to flip this way. In this case, looking at it, my y is not going to change. My x is going to change. So the y isn't going to change, but my x is going to go from a negative to a positive. Okay, so we're 2 away here. We're going to be 2 away over here. So my y stays the same, -1, and my x becomes +2. I'm down to 2, -1. So that's my new point. So we have them here. So this is, again, how I'm using a lot of my thinking. Notice what I'm thinking of, how I'm jotting it down. I'm using my generalizations. I'm going to add in my reflection generalizations. So in this case, my xy, my x stayed the same, my y flipped. That's what changed. And that was when I had my over the x-axis. When it went over the y-axis, this was the second change, we noticed that the y stayed the same, but the x, I used the opposite x because it flipped over on that axis. So here are all my generalizations so you can see them here. And again, take your time and use your thinking to get this down. This is again very visual. So if you need to draw, if you need to move points around, definitely use pencil and talk to your peers and your teachers as always, and take this one step at a time. Chunk each step out before you make the next change. Okay, Math Marbles, we're going to stop here for now. I hope this was really helpful. As always, if you have questions, put them in the comments, put them in the videos, ask your peers, ask your teachers, and take note of where things are challenging and when things are getting easier as you get more and more practice. I will see you in the next lesson, Math Marbles. We're going to be doing tons of transformations, and we're going to keep doing this work for a little bit of time. I know it will come together with more practice. Take care.